I still remember the exact moment I realized my best friend was going to destroy me. We were standing in the parking lot of our climbing gym, the one we'd been going to together for 8 years. And Eric was telling me about his new business opportunity with this tone in his voice I'd never heard before. Excitement mixed with something else, something that made my stomach tighten. "It's revolutionary, Mark," he said, bouncing on his toes like he always did when he got animated. "Complete disruption of the traditional model. We're talking about changing how every independent climbing gym in the country operates." I adjusted my chalk bag and tried to match his enthusiasm. "That's great, man. So it's like a software platform?" "Better. It's a comprehensive management system, inventory, staffing, member retention, everything. And here's the thing." He grabbed my shoulder, his grip tight. "I want you to come in on the ground floor. Partner with me. We build this together." Eric Johnson had been my closest friend since college. We'd met during orientation week, both of us awkward engineering students who bonded over terrible dining hall food and our shared love of problem solving. After graduation, we'd gone different directions. I'd taken a job as a structural engineer at a mid-sized firm, while Eric had bounced between startups, always chasing the next big thing. But we'd stayed tight, climbing every Wednesday and Saturday, beers after, birthday parties, holidays, the whole 9 yards. His wife Jennifer tolerated me. My girlfriend Rachel actually liked him. We were locked in, the kind of friendship people wrote greeting cards about. "I don't know anything about software," I said, laughing. "I design buildings. I make sure they don't fall down." "Exactly. And climbing gyms are buildings, specialized buildings, with unique structural requirements, Mark. You know every gym we've ever climbed in, what works, what doesn't, what's dangerous, what's inefficient. That knowledge is invaluable." We walked toward the entrance and I felt that familiar pull of his charisma. Eric had always been the visionary between us. I was methodical, careful, technical. He was bold, persuasive, magnetic. It's why his startups always got funded even when they eventually failed. People believed in Eric Johnson. "Let me think about it," I said. Of course, of course. No pressure. Just think fast. I'm meeting with investors next month and I really want you on board before then. We're stronger together. You know that?" I did know that. Or at least, I thought I did. 3 weeks later, I was signing partnership papers in Eric's apartment. Jennifer brought us celebratory wine and Rachel squeezed my hand under the table. Climb Tech Solutions was officially born, a 50-50 partnership between best friends who were going to change the industry. "To the future," Eric said, raising his glass. "To the future," I echoed. If I'd known that future, I would have walked away right then. But hindsight is a gift nobody gets when they need it. The first 6 months were exhilarating. We worked like madmen, Eric handling the business development and investor relations, while I consulted on the technical specifications and safety features. I'd go to my day job, put in my 8 hours designing office buildings and residential complexes, then spend my evenings and weekends on Climb Tech. Rachel started seeing less of me. "I miss you," she'd say, curled up on the couch while I hunched over my laptop at the kitchen table. "Just a few more months," I'd promise. "Once we get through the initial development phase, things will calm down." She'd nod, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. Rachel worked as a physical therapist, helping people recover from injuries with patience and steady care. She understood long-term investment, but she also understood burnout. I was trending toward the latter. Eric, meanwhile, seemed to have unlimited energy. He'd show up at my apartment at 11 p.m. with coffee and new ideas, talking a mile a minute about potential clients and market penetration strategies. Sometimes I wondered if he slept. "You look tired," Jennifer told me once, when I bumped into her at the grocery store. "Eric is working you too hard." "We're working each other hard," I said. "That's what building something takes." She gave me this strange look, almost pitying. "Just take care of yourself, Mark. Don't lose yourself in his dreams." I should have listened to her. Jennifer had known Eric longer than anyone. She'd seen his patterns, his cycles of obsession and abandonment, but I was too caught up in the excitement, too invested in the friendship and the vision we'd built together. Our first major breakthrough came in month 7. Eric landed a meeting with Vertical Ventures, a climbing gym chain with 23 locations across the West Coast. If we could get him on board, it would validate everything we'd been working toward. "This is it," Eric said, pacing in my living room the night before the presentation. "This is what makes us real." I'd spent the previous week preparing the technical demonstration, making sure every feature worked flawlessly. The system was good, actually revolutionary, just like Eric had promised. We'd integrated safety monitoring with member management, creating a platform that could predict equipment maintenance needs while simultaneously boosting customer retention. It was elegant, efficient, and genuinely useful. "We got this," I told him. "The product sells itself." The presentation went perfectly. The Vertical Ventures team loved the demo, asked smart questions, nodded at all the right moments. Their CEO, a weathered climber named Tom Berkshire, actually clapped when we finished. "This is impressive," he said. "Really impressive. Eric, you mentioned you had some preliminary pricing structures." Eric smoothly transitioned into the business side, and I sat back, riding the high of a successful pitch. We were actually doing it. We were building something that mattered. 2 weeks later, Eric called me at work, screaming with joy. "We got it! We fucking got it, Mark! 3-year contract, all 23 locations, with an option for expansion." I nearly dropped my phone. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. They're sending over the contracts today. We're celebrating tonight. Big dinner, my treat. Bring Rachel." That dinner was one of the best nights of my life. Eric and Jennifer, Rachel and me, toasting and laughing and planning the future. We talked about quitting our day jobs, about expanding beyond climbing gyms, about where this could take us. The wine flowed, the food was incredible, and for once, Rachel looked genuinely happy about Climb Tech. "I'm proud of you," she whispered in my ear as we left the restaurant. "I know it's been hard, but you did it." I kissed her, feeling like everything was finally coming together. Contracts arrived the next day. Eric called me that evening, his voice tight. "We needed to talk about the equity structure." "What do you mean? We're 50-50 partners." "Right, but I've been thinking about sweat equity and initial investment. I'm the one who brought the vision, who landed the investors, who made the Vertical Ventures connection. And technically, I put in more capital at the start." My stomach dropped. "Eric, we agreed. Equal partners." "We did, and we still are. I'm just talking about adjusting for contribution. Maybe 60-40? That's still incredibly fair given..." No. My voice came out harder than I intended. We had an agreement. If you want to change it now, we need to revisit everything. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, of course. You're right. I'm sorry. I was just thinking out loud. 50-50 is what we agreed on. Let's keep it that way. I should have known then. That moment of negotiation, that testing of boundaries, it was the first crack in the foundation. But I wanted to believe in the friendship more than I wanted to protect myself. We're good? I asked. We're good, brother. Always. 3 months into the Vertical Ventures implementation, I started noticing irregularities. Small things at first. Eric scheduling meetings without me, making decisions about feature development without consultation, referring to ClimbTech as my company in emails I was accidentally copied on. I confronted him about it over our Wednesday climb. We were belaying each other on a challenging 5.12 route, and between attempts I brought it up. You called it your company in an email to Tom Berkshire, I said, trying to keep my tone light. Eric chalked his hands, not meeting my eyes. Did I? I probably just meant our company and typed wrong. You know how I am with emails. And the meetings with potential investors without me? Mark, you have a day job. I didn't want to pull you away for preliminary conversations. Once things get serious, you'll be there for every discussion. You know that. He was right about the day job. I was still working full-time as a structural engineer, while Eric had gone all in on ClimbTech 6 months ago. It made sense that he'd handle more of the day-to-day business development. It made sense, but it didn't feel right. Just keep me in the loop, I said. Even if I can't make a meeting, I want to know what's happening. Absolutely, 100%. We're partners, Mark. I'd never cut you out. He started his climb, and I watched him ascend with that same fluid grace he'd always had. Eric was a better climber than me, always had been. Stronger, more flexible, more willing to take risks. I was the steady one, the one who planned every move before reaching for the next hold. Maybe that's why I didn't see it coming. The real problem started when Eric brought in outside counsel. He'd hired a corporate attorney named Douglas Patterson to help structure our expansion plans, which seemed reasonable enough. Vertical Ventures had gone so well that we were in talks with 4 more gym chains. We needed proper legal infrastructure. What I didn't know was that Douglas Patterson was working exclusively for Eric. I found out during a conference call about Series A funding. We'd attracted interest from 2 venture capital firms, and they wanted to talk about valuation and equity distribution. I'd taken the afternoon off work to participate, sitting in my home office while Eric was at some co-working space downtown. The VCs started asking about the cap table, and Eric walked them through it. I heard him say the numbers. Eric Johnson 65%, Mark Morrison 20%, employee stock option pool 15%. My vision actually blurred. I'm sorry, what? The VC on the line, a woman named Sandra Kim, sounded confused. Is there a discrepancy? Yes, I said, my voice shaking. There's a massive discrepancy, Eric. What the hell are you talking about? We're 50-50 partners. Mark, we restructured after the Vertical Ventures contract. Don't you remember? We signed the amended operating agreement. We absolutely did not. Silence on the call. Then Sandra. Gentlemen, it sounds like you need to sort out your internal matters before we proceed. Douglas, your counsel for ClimbTech? Douglas Patterson's smooth voice came through the speaker. I represent Mr. Johnson in his capacity as majority shareholder and CEO. If there's confusion about the operating agreement, I'd be happy to send over the executed documents. Send them, I said, because I never signed anything changing our partnership. After the call ended, my phone rang immediately. Eric, obviously. Mark, calm down. Don't you dare tell me to calm down. What the fuck did you just try to pull? I'm not pulling anything. We restructured the company to make it more attractive to investors. You knew this was coming. I knew nothing. We're equal partners, Eric. That was the deal. His voice hardened. The deal was that we'd build something together, and we have. But I'm the one who quit my job, who's been living on savings for the past year, who brought in every single client, who made this happen. You're still cashing paychecks from your engineering firm. You're not all in like I am. Because you told me not to quit. You said we needed the stability of my income. And now we need the stability of a clear leadership structure. Investors want to know who's in charge, Mark. They want a CEO with a decisive stake. I talked to Douglas, and he agreed this was the best path forward. Douglas works for you, apparently, not for us, not for Climetech. He works for the company's best interests. I was gripping my phone so hard, my knuckles were white. Send me whatever documents you're claiming I signed, because I'm telling you right now, my signature isn't on anything that gives you 65% of my company. It's not your company, Mark. It's our company. And you need to think about what's best for our future, not just your ego. He hung up. I sat there, staring at my computer screen, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. 8 years of friendship. All those climbs, those beers, those late-night conversations about dreams and fears and everything that mattered. Had it all been a setup? Had Eric been planning this from the beginning? The documents arrived in my email an hour later. I opened them with shaking hands. They were forgeries. Good ones, too. The operating agreement showed my signature on the amended terms, dated 3 months prior. The handwriting looked like mine. The notary stamp looked official, but I had never ever seen these documents before, let alone signed them. Eric had committed fraud. My best friend had forged my signature to steal my company. I called Rachel. She came over immediately, found me sitting on the floor of my office, papers scattered around me. "What happened?" she asked, kneeling beside me. I told her everything. She listened, her face growing progressively more horrified. "You need a lawyer," she said. "Right now, tonight." "I know. And Mark, I'm so sorry. I know how much he meant to you." That's what hurt the most. Not the theft, not the fraud, not even the betrayal of the partnership. It was the betrayal of the friendship. Eric had been my brother in everything but blood, and he'd looked at me and decided I was worth less than a bigger equity stake. I found a lawyer specializing in business fraud. Her name was Patricia Valdez, and she had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in partnership disputes. I met with her the next morning, bringing every document I had. She reviewed everything with a careful eye, then looked up at me. "This is forgery, which is a crime. We can absolutely fight this, but I need you to understand something. Litigation like this is expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally devastating. And Eric Johnson has already positioned himself as the face of the company. Investors are talking to him, contracts are in his name. Even if we prove fraud, unwinding this will be complicated. I don't care, I said. He stole from me. He forged my signature. I want him to face consequences. Then we'll make him face consequences. But Mark, I need you to be prepared for this to get ugly. He's going to fight back, and he's going to use every connection and resource he has. Are you ready for that? I thought about Eric's network, his charm, his ability to make people believe in him. I thought about how many investors and clients would take his word over mine. I thought about our mutual friends, about Jennifer, about the whole social circle that would be forced to choose sides. I'm ready, I said. I wasn't ready. The first salvo came 2 days later. Eric sent a company-wide email. We had 12 employees by this point, announcing that I was taking a leave of absence due to personal issues and a need to focus on my primary employment. He thanked me for my contributions to ClimeTech's early development and wished me well in my future endeavors. I hadn't been fired exactly. I'd been erased. My phone exploded with messages from colleagues and friends. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. I kept my responses vague, saying only that there was a dispute about the partnership agreement and that my lawyer had advised me not to discuss details. Some people believed me. Most people believed Eric. He was good at this part. He always had been. Eric could sell anything to anyone, and what he was selling now was a story about an overworked engineer who'd contributed to the early stages of a startup but couldn't commit to the demands of rapid growth. A guy who'd helped with the technical foundation but wasn't equipped for the business side. A good friend who deserved respect and gratitude, but not equity in a company he wasn't building anymore. It was all bullshit, but it was persuasive bullshit. Rachel stood by me, my family stood by me, everyone else wavered. Jennifer called me crying, "Mark, I don't know what's happening between you and Eric, but he's not sleeping, he's not eating. He says you're trying to destroy everything he's built." "Did he tell you about the forged documents?" I asked. "He said there was a misunderstanding about the operating agreement, that you signed it and forgot, or that you're having some kind of crisis and rewriting history. Mark, are you okay? Like, mentally?" That's when I realized how thoroughly he'd played this. Eric wasn't just stealing my company, he was stealing my credibility. He was making me look unstable, unreliable, delusional. "I'm fine, Jennifer. Your husband committed fraud. I have a lawyer, and we're going to prove it." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I've known Eric for 15 years, Mark. He's not a criminal. He's just ambitious. Maybe too ambitious sometimes, but he wouldn't do what you're describing." "Then you don't know him as well as you think." She hung up. Patricia Valdez moved fast. We filed a lawsuit within 2 weeks alleging fraud, breach of contract, and conversion. The complaint laid out everything: the original 50-50 partnership agreement, Eric's attempt to renegotiate, my refusal, and the subsequent appearance of forged documents. Eric responded through Douglas Patterson, denying all allegations and filing a countersuit for defamation and harassment. According to their version of events, I was a disgruntled minority partner trying to extort my way into a larger stake in a company I'd barely contributed to. The legal battle consumed my life. I was still working my day job, but every spare moment went to depositions, document review, and strategy sessions with Patricia. My savings started to drain. My performance at work started to slip. My boss called me in for a conversation. "Mark, I'm worried about you. Your work has always been excellent, but lately, you've been distracted. Mistakes are creeping in. I need to know if you're okay." I wasn't okay. I was barely holding it together, but I couldn't tell him that without risking my job. And I needed that job more than ever now. "I'm dealing with some personal issues," I said, "but I'll do better. I promise." He nodded, unconvinced. "Take a few days off. Get your head straight. We need you at your best." I took the time off, but I didn't rest. Instead, I dove deeper into the investigation of Eric's fraud. Patricia had hired a forensic document examiner to analyze the forged signatures, and she'd subpoenaed records from the notary whose stamp appeared on the fraudulent operating agreement. The notary had no record of ever notarizing my signature. That was good for our case, but Eric's lawyers argued that the notary's record keeping was sloppy and that the absence of a record didn't prove anything. Meanwhile, ClimeTech was thriving. Eric closed the Series A funding round, $10 million at a valuation that made my stomach turn. If I'd still held 50%, I would have been a multimillionaire on paper. Instead, I was watching my former best friend get rich off my work while I burned through my savings on legal fees. Rachel asked me, gently, whether it was worth it. "I know you're right about what he did," she said, "but Mark, this is killing you. Is winning this case worth losing everything else?" "It's not about winning," I said. "It's about justice. He can't just steal from me and walk away." "But what if he does? What if the court rules in his favor? What if you spend the next 2 years fighting this and lose everything, your savings, your job, your peace of mind, and he still ends up with the company?" I didn't have a good answer for that. The turning point came 6 months into the litigation. Patricia called me with news that made my heart race. "We found something," she said. "Douglas Patterson's assistant made a mistake. They sent us a batch of discovery documents, and buried in there was an email chain between Eric and Douglas from before the alleged signing date. Eric specifically asks Douglas to prepare amended docs with the new equity split, and mentions that he'll handle getting Mark's signature one way or another." "That's proof," I said. "That proves he was planning the forgery. It's strong evidence of intent, but their side will argue the phrase is ambiguous, that one way or another could mean through negotiation. We need more. What else could there possibly be? A witness? Someone who saw him forge the signature, or who he told about the plan, someone on the inside who's willing to talk." I thought about the ClimeTech employees, most of whom Eric had hired. I thought about Jennifer, who believed in her husband. I thought about our mutual friends, who'd all sided with Eric's version of events. "I don't think anyone's going to help me," I said. "Then we keep digging. But Mark, you should prepare yourself for the possibility that this comes down to a he said situation. Even with the email, a jury might not be convinced beyond the preponderance of evidence." I felt the walls closing in. That night I did something I'm not proud of. I drove to the climbing gym, our gym, the place where Eric and I had spent hundreds of hours together. I knew he climbed there every Wednesday, and I knew he'd probably be there around 7 p.m. I wasn't planning a confrontation. I just needed to see him. Needed to understand how someone could do this to a friend. He was there, working a difficult overhang route, his face set in concentration. He looked good, healthy, happy even. This wasn't eating him alive the way it was eating me. I watched him from across the gym until he finished the climb and came down. He spotted me immediately and something flickered across his face. Guilt? Anger? I couldn't tell. He walked over slowly, chalking his hands. Mark. Eric. We stood there, two former best friends who now couldn't even look at each other properly. You should drop the lawsuit, he said quietly. You're not going to win, and you're just hurting yourself. You forged my signature. You committed fraud. That's your story. Mine is that you're a bitter guy who can't handle not being in control, who can't accept that some people are built to lead companies and some people aren't. The contempt in his voice staggered me. This wasn't the Eric I'd known. Or maybe it was, and I'd just never seen this side of him before. I was your friend, I said. How could you do this? You were my friend when it was convenient, when we were just two guys climbing and dreaming. But when it came time to actually build something real, you wanted to coast. You wanted to keep your safe job and your safe life and still reap all the rewards of my risk-taking. That's not how this works. I built the entire technical platform. I designed every system, every safety feature, every integration. You didn't do that alone. And I've paid you for that contribution. 20% is generous for a technical consultant. I'm not a consultant. I'm your partner. He smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Not anymore, Mark. You need to accept that and move on for your own sake. He walked away, leaving me standing there in a climbing gym that suddenly felt like foreign territory. I should have listened to him. I should have cut my losses, taken whatever settlement Patricia could negotiate, and walked away, but I couldn't. The injustice of it burned too hot. So I kept fighting. The case dragged into its second year. My savings were gone. I'd taken out a loan against my 401k to pay legal fees. My performance reviews at work had gone from excellent to needs improvement, and I knew I was one mistake away from being fired. Rachel finally reached her breaking point. I can't do this anymore, she said. We were sitting in my apartment. She'd stopped staying over months ago, and her eyes were red from crying. I love you, Mark, but you're not the person I fell in love with. You're consumed by this. It's all you think about, all you talk about, all you care about. That's not true, I said, even though it absolutely was true. When's the last time we went on a date? When's the last time you asked about my day? When's the last time you were actually present when we were together? I couldn't answer. I hope you win, she said. I really do. I hope you get everything you deserve. But I can't wait around to see if you survive the process. I'm sorry. She left, and I was alone. 2 weeks later, I got fired. My boss was apologetic, but firm. I'd made a critical calculation error on a structural design that could have resulted in a building code violation. It was the kind of mistake I never would have made 2 years ago, but I was so exhausted and distracted that I'd missed it. I'm sorry, Mark, he said. I really am, but I can't have this level of error on my team. It's a liability issue. I cleaned out my desk in a daze. 7 years at that firm, gone. Just like my friendship with Eric, just like my relationship with Rachel. The lawsuit was costing me everything. Patricia called me that evening with more bad news. Eric's legal team filed a motion for summary judgment. They're arguing that even if we prove the signature was forged, you ratified the amended agreement through your continued participation in the company after the alleged signing date. What does that mean? It means they're claiming that by continuing to work on climtech projects, attending meetings, and accepting the minority position without immediately objecting, you effectively agreed to the new terms. It's a weak argument, but the judge might buy it. This is insane. He forged my signature. I know, and we're going to fight it. But Mark, I need to be honest with you. We're running out of money and we're running out of options. If we don't find that smoking gun witness, this case might not go the way we want. That night, I sat in my empty apartment and seriously considered giving up. What was the point of winning if there was nothing left of my life when it was over? My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mark Morrison? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Who's this? My name is Sarah Johnson. I'm Eric's younger sister. I sat up straight. I'd met Sarah a few times over the years. She lived in Chicago and didn't visit often. She was a corporate accountant, quiet and serious, where Eric was outgoing and charismatic. Why are you calling me? Because I know what my brother did, and I can't stay silent anymore. She took a shaky breath. He told me about the forged signature. He was drunk at Christmas, celebrating the Series A funding, and he bragged about it, about how he'd outsmarted you, how you'd never be able to prove it, how he'd built the perfect paper trail. My heart was pounding. He admitted it to you? Not just admitted it. He showed me the original document he'd practiced your signature on. He still had it. He thought it was funny, thought it showed how clever he was. I told him he needed to come clean to make it right, but he just laughed at me, said business was war, and you'd been too naive to protect yourself. Will you testify to that? Long silence. If I do this, I'm destroying my relationship with my brother. He'll never forgive me. He doesn't deserve your loyalty, Sarah, not after what he did. I know, that's why I'm calling. But I need you to understand what this costs me. He's my only sibling. Our parents are gone. If I do this, I'm choosing your justice over my family. I thought about what Eric had cost me. My company, my savings, my job, my relationship, my peace of mind. Everything I'd valued, stripped away piece by piece. I can't make this decision for you, I said, but I can tell you that if you stay silent, he'll do this to someone else. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but eventually. People who operate like Eric don't stop at one victim. She was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, give me your lawyer's number, I'll contact her tomorrow. Sarah, thank you, you're doing the right thing. I hope so, I really hope so. She hung up, and for the first time in nearly 2 years I felt something close to hope. Sarah Johnson's testimony changed everything. Patricia deposed her 3 weeks later, and her account was devastating. She described Eric's drunken confession in detail, including his admission that he'd forged my signature because Mark would never agree to a smaller stake, and I needed majority control to close the funding round. She provided the practice document. Eric had apparently kept it as some kind of trophy, tucked in a folder in his home office. The handwriting analysis matched it to the forged operating agreement signature. It was the smoking gun we needed. Eric's legal team went into crisis mode. Douglas Patterson called Patricia with a settlement offer. I'd get 35% equity, Eric would keep 65%, and we'd both sign NDAs about the circumstances. Fuck that, I said. I want my 50%. I want him to admit what he did, and I want him out as CEO. Mark, we have leverage now, but nothing is guaranteed, Patricia said. A settlement gives you certainty. A trial is still a risk. I'll take the risk. We went to trial 4 months later. It was brutal. Eric's lawyers painted me as a failed engineer with a grudge, someone trying to steal credit for a successful company I'd barely contributed to. They attacked Sarah's credibility, suggested she was lying to get revenge for some past family grievance. But the evidence was too strong. The forged signature, the practice document, Sarah's testimony, the email about getting Mark's signature one way or another, it all added up to a clear pattern of fraud. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman read the verdict. We find in favor of the plaintiff, Mark Morrison, on all counts. The judge ordered the operating agreement voided and reinstated the original 50-50 partnership. She also awarded me damages for lost wages and legal fees. Eric would have to pay me back everything I'd spent fighting him, plus interest. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt empty. The aftermath was messy. Eric was forced to send a company-wide email admitting to the fraud and announcing my reinstatement as equal partner. Half the staff quit immediately, uncomfortable with the drama. The investors threatened to pull their funding over the ethical violation. Eric himself broke. I saw him at the first post-trial board meeting, and he looked like a stranger. The charisma was gone, replaced by barely controlled rage. He wouldn't look at me, wouldn't speak to me except through clipped professional statements. Jennifer filed for divorce 3 weeks after the verdict. She'd stood by him through the trial, but the evidence of what he'd done, and more importantly, his complete lack of remorse, had finally shattered her faith in him. Sarah stopped speaking to him entirely. He'd sent her a vicious email after her testimony, calling her a traitor and wishing her dead. She forwarded it to me with a simple message: I made the right choice. Climetech survived, but it was never the same. Eric and I ran it as hostile partners, communicating only through intermediaries, making every decision a battle. The company that had been built on friendship and shared vision became a cold, corporate machine. The tension was unbearable. Every board meeting turned into a war zone. Eric would propose one direction, I'd propose another, and we'd deadlock on even the simplest decisions. The employees walked on eggshells, never knowing which partner to align with. Clients started asking questions about the leadership instability. I started having dreams about the early days, Eric and me at the climbing gym, laughing about some stupid joke. Working late nights on the initial platform design, fueled by pizza and ambition, that dinner after we landed Vertical Ventures when everything had seemed possible. Those memories felt like they belonged to different people. The Eric I'd been friends with and the Eric sitting across from me at board meetings were two completely different human beings. Or maybe they weren't. Maybe I'd just been too blind to see who he really was all along. 3 months into our hostile partnership arrangement, a Vertical Ventures location in Sacramento had a safety incident. A climbing hold came loose and a member fell, breaking his wrist. It wasn't catastrophic, but it was exactly the kind of thing our system was supposed to prevent. The post-incident analysis revealed that the gym had ignored multiple maintenance alerts from our platform. The system had flagged that specific hold for inspection 2 weeks before the accident, but the gym manager had dismissed the alerts as false positives. Tom Berkshire called an emergency meeting. Eric and I both showed up, the first time we'd been in the same room since the board meeting where he'd glared at me in silence for 2 hours. "Gentlemen," Tom said, his weathered face grave, "we have a problem. My insurance company is asking questions about your platform's reliability. They want to know if this was a system failure or a human error failure. And more importantly, they want to know if the company building our safety infrastructure is stable enough to continue the partnership." Eric jumped in immediately. "Tom, this was entirely on your manager. The system worked perfectly. We sent the alerts. Your team ignored them. That's not a technology problem." "I agree," I said, and Eric's head snapped toward me in surprise. The platform performed exactly as designed, but Eric's right. This is a training and compliance issue on the gym's end. It was the first time we'd agreed on anything in months, Tom noticed. "That's good to hear," he said slowly. "But my insurance company is also asking about your company's leadership structure. They're aware of the lawsuit, the fraud allegations, the verdict. They're concerned that a company run by two partners who can't stand each other might not be the most reliable vendor for safety-critical systems." The implication hung in the air like a lead weight. Eric and I left the meeting in silence, walking to the parking lot side by side, but miles apart. Finally, he spoke. "We can't keep doing this," he said. "I know. Every decision is a fight. Every meeting is a disaster. The company is suffering." "I know." He stopped walking and turned to face me. For the first time since the trial, he actually looked at me, really looked at me, not through me. "I fucked up," he said quietly. "I know you won't believe me, but I need to say it. I got so caught up in the vision, in making ClimbTech succeed, that I convinced myself the ends justified the means. I told myself you weren't as committed as I was, that you didn't deserve equal ownership because you weren't taking the same risks. But that was bullshit. That was me rationalizing fraud because I wanted control." I didn't know what to say. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, Eric admitting what he'd done, apologizing, showing remorse. But now that it was happening, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, no relief, just exhaustion. "Why now?" I asked. "Because Sarah sent me a letter, a real letter, handwritten. She told me that our parents will be ashamed of what I've become, that they raised us to have integrity, and I threw that away for money and ego." His voice cracked. "She's right. They would be ashamed. I'm ashamed. That doesn't fix anything. I know, but I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I did to you, to us, to everyone who trusted me. And I'm sorry, Mark. I know sorry isn't enough, but it's all I have." We stood there in the parking lot. Two former best friends who'd destroyed each other over a company neither of us could run anymore. "Where do we go from here?" I asked. "I don't know, but we can't keep running ClimbTech like this. We're going to kill it." He was right. The company we'd built together was being smothered by our mutual resentment. Employees were leaving for competitors. Potential clients were choosing other platforms. The Series A investors were getting nervous. "We need an exit strategy," I said. "Agreed, but what does that look like?" Over the next 2 weeks, Eric and I had a series of conversations, carefully structured, often mediated by Patricia Valdez, never quite friendly, but at least civil. We laid out our options. Sell, the company, bring in a neutral CEO to run it, or split it into two separate entities. None of the options were good. Splitting the company would destroy the integrated platform that made ClimeTech valuable. Bringing in a neutral CEO would dilute our ownership and control. And selling. Selling meant admitting defeat, walking away from everything we'd built, but it also meant freedom. After 6 months of this dysfunctional arrangement, a larger fitness technology company approached us about an acquisition. The offer was substantial, enough to make both Eric and me wealthy, though not fuck you money wealthy, just comfortable for life wealthy. We took the meeting together, sitting on opposite sides of the conference table like opposing lawyers. The acquiring company's CEO, a sharp woman named Diana Torres, clearly sensed the tension. "Gentlemen, I'll be frank," she said. "We want ClimeTech's technology and customer base. We don't necessarily need either of you to stick around post-acquisition, but we'd prefer not to buy a company that's eating itself alive from internal conflict. So here's my question. Can you two work together, or do we need to structure this as an acquisition of assets with both founders departing?" Eric spoke first. "I built this company, the technology, the client relationships, the strategic vision. That's all me. Mark was an early contributor, but he hasn't been involved in day-to-day operations for 2 years." I started to object, but Diana held up a hand. "Mr. Morrison, you'll get your turn. Mr. Johnson, I've done my due diligence. I know about the lawsuit, I know about the fraud, and I know that Mark Morrison designed the entire technical platform that makes your software valuable. So let's dispense with the posturing." Eric's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Diana turned to me. "Mr. Morrison, same question. Can you work with this man?" I looked at Eric, really looked at him. The person sitting across from me bore some physical resemblance to my former best friend, but everything else was different. The warmth was gone, the trust was gone. The friendship was so thoroughly destroyed that I couldn't even remember what it had felt like to trust him. "No," I said. "I can't, and I don't want to. I want out." "Then we'll structure the acquisition accordingly," Diana said. "You'll both get your equity payout, and you'll both sign transition agreements to help with the handoff. After that, you're free to go your separate ways." The deal closed 90 days later. After taxes and paying back my 401k loan, I walked away with just under $4 million. Not the 8 or 10 million I might have gotten if Eric hadn't committed fraud. Not the 20 million I might have gotten if we'd stayed partners and kept growing the company, but enough to rebuild my life. Eric got the same amount. He immediately started a new venture, something in the cryptocurrency space. I heard through the grapevine that he was burning through investors, making big promises he couldn't keep. Some people never learn. I took 6 months off to decompress. I traveled to places I'd always wanted to see. New Zealand, where I climbed the mountains around Queenstown. Thailand, where I learned to rock climb on limestone casts overlooking turquoise water. Iceland, where the otherworldly landscapes made my problems feel very small and very far away. I read books, not business books or self-help books, but novels and poetry and philosophy. I remembered that there was a world beyond startups and lawsuits and betrayal. I slowly started to remember who I'd been before ClimeTech had consumed my life. Rachel reached out about a year after the acquisition. We met for coffee, tentative and awkward. "You look good," she said, "healthier." "I feel healthier. The lawsuit nearly killed me." "I know. I'm sorry I couldn't stay." "Don't be." You were right to leave. I was barely human at that point. We talked for 2 hours, catching up on our separate lives. She was dating someone new, a teacher she'd met through work. I was genuinely happy for her. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Fighting him for so long?" I thought about that. I'd lost 2 years of my life, a relationship, a job, and most of my savings to that fight. I'd won in court, but the victory had cost almost as much as losing would have. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I won. I got justice. But justice is expensive, and sometimes I wonder if it was worth the price." "Would you do it again?" "Yeah, I think I would. Not because it was smart, but because letting him get away with it would have eaten me alive in a different way. At least this way I can look at myself in the mirror." She smiled. "That sounds like the Mark I fell in love with." We parted as friends, which felt like its own kind of victory, small but real. I eventually went back to structural engineering, but at a different firm, a smaller outfit in Portland that did interesting work, museums, performance spaces, unusual residential projects that required creative problem solving. The kind of work that had attracted me to engineering in the first place before I'd gotten caught up in the startup dream. I was careful about partnerships now, careful about trust, careful about everything. Some people called me cynical. I called it learned wisdom. My new boss, a woman named Catherine, who'd been practicing for 30 years, noticed my wariness early on. "You've been burned," she said one day, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been there. Business partnership?" "Best friend," I said. "Business partner, both." She nodded knowingly. "The worst kind, when someone betrays you professionally, it's bad. When someone betrays you personally, it's devastating. When it's both, it rewires your whole approach to trust." "How do you get past it?" "You don't, really. You just learn to live with it." "And you learn to recognize the warning signs earlier next time." She paused. "But you can't let it make you so careful that you never trust anyone again. That's just another kind of prison." Her words stayed with me. I was in a prison of my own making, one built from caution and suspicion and the fear of being hurt again. I'd won the war against Eric, but I was still letting him control my life by living in reaction to what he'd done. Slowly, carefully, I started to open up again. I made new friends through climbing, though I avoided the gym where Eric and I had spent so many hours. I went on dates, though it took a long time before I could let anyone get close. I invested in myself, therapy, hobbies, travel, experiences that had nothing to do with business or revenge or anything, but living. Years passed. I heard occasional updates about Eric through mutual acquaintances who didn't realize how loaded the topic was. His cryptocurrency venture had failed. He'd started and shuttered 2 more companies. He'd gotten remarried and divorced again. He was burning through his climb tech money, chasing the next big win that never materialized. I didn't take pleasure in his failures. I didn't take anything from them at all. He'd become irrelevant to my life, a cautionary tale I sometimes told when the subject of business partnerships came up. The last time I saw him was 5 years after the ClimbTech acquisition. I was at a coffee shop in downtown Portland, meeting a potential client about a residential project when he walked in. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment we just stared at each other. He looked older, tired. The manic energy that had once defined him had dimmed to something smaller and harder. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, and his shoulders had a defeated slump that I'd never seen in the Eric I'd known. I nodded at him. He nodded back. Then we both looked away, back to our respective lives, two former best friends who'd become strangers through betrayal and its consequences. I sometimes think about what I'd say to my younger self, the guy signing partnership papers in Eric's apartment, toasting to the future with cheap wine and big dreams. Would I tell him to walk away, to protect himself better, to never trust his best friend? Probably not, because that young guy wouldn't have listened. He needed to learn those lessons the hard way, through pain and loss and the slow, agonizing process of fighting for what was his. But I might tell him this. Friendship and business are different currencies, and you can't always exchange one for the other. Some people can be great friends and terrible partners. Some people can make you laugh on a climbing wall and then destroy your life in a boardroom. The key is knowing which type of person you're dealing with before it's too late. I learned that lesson. It cost me 2 years, a relationship, a job, and nearly my sanity. But I learned it, and in the end, I survived. Damaged, sure. Scarred, absolutely. But alive and whole and free from the weight of that betrayal. Eric didn't fare as well. Last I heard, he was working as a sales manager at some mid-tier tech company, all his grand visions reduced to hitting quarterly targets for someone else's dream. He'd burned every bridge, alienated every friend, and lost every person who'd ever believed in him. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just destroy the person being betrayed. It hollows out the betrayer too, leaves them with nothing but the empty victory they fought so hard to win. I got my company back, I got my justice, and then I walked away from all of it, choosing peace over revenge, choosing life over the endless cycle of fighting. Eric is still fighting, still chasing, still convinced that the next big win will validate all the people he stepped on to get there. But some debts can't be paid with money or success. Some betrayals echo forever, a constant reminder of who you really are when the mask comes off. I hope he thinks about that sometimes, in those quiet moments when the hustle stops and he's alone with his choices. I hope he remembers that day in the parking lot when he admitted what he'd done, when he said our parents would be ashamed of him. I hope that moment of clarity wasn't just strategic positioning, but genuine remorse. But I don't think about it often anymore. That's the real victory, not the court judgment, not the money, not even the vindication of being proven right. The real victory is that Eric Johnson no longer occupies space in my mind unless I consciously choose to think about him. I rebuilt my life. I found new friends, new work that challenges and fulfills me, new ways of being in the world that don't revolve around the trauma of what he did. I learned to trust again, carefully and selectively, but genuinely. And I learned something else too, that justice and revenge are not the same thing. I could have destroyed Eric more thoroughly if I'd wanted to. I could have leaked the details of his fraud to tech media, ensured he'd never work in the industry again, turned him into a cautionary tale that followed him everywhere. But I didn't, because revenge is about making someone else suffer. Justice is about making things right. I wanted things right, not blood. The court gave me that. The verdict restored my partnership, awarded me damages, forced Eric to acknowledge what he'd done. It didn't erase the betrayal or restore the friendship, but it balanced the scales in a way that mattered. After that, the best thing I could do for myself, not for Eric, was to walk away, to sell the company, take my money, and build a new life unencumbered by the wreckage of the old one. That's what I did. And 5 years later, I can honestly say I'm happy. Not in the naive, unconsidered way I was happy before the betrayal, but in a deeper, more resilient way. I'm happy because I know myself better now. I understand my limits, my values, what I'm willing to sacrifice, and what I'll fight to protect. Eric taught me that inadvertently. By taking everything from me, he showed me what actually mattered. By forcing me to fight for my dignity and my rights, he taught me that I was stronger than I'd known. I wish I'd learned those lessons a different way. I wish our friendship had survived. I wish Climb Tech had been the success story we'd dreamed about, built by two best friends who lifted each other up instead of tearing each other down. But wishing doesn't change anything. What happened, happened. Eric made his choices and I made mine. He chose fraud and greed and the illusion of control. I chose truth and justice and the hard work of rebuilding. We both got what we chose. He got a temporary win that turned into a permanent loss of his sister, his wife, his reputation, his integrity. I got a painful victory that cost me nearly everything, but left me with the one thing that mattered most: my self-respect. I can live with that trade. I suspect Eric can't live with his, but that's not my problem anymore. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder what would have happened if I'd just accepted the 20%. If I'd swallowed the betrayal, taken the smaller stake, and moved on with my life. Would I have avoided years of hell? Would Rachel and I still be together? Would I have kept my job, my savings, my peace of mind? Maybe. Probably. But I also would have had to live with the knowledge that I'd let someone steal from me. That I'd valued comfort over justice, convenience over principle. That when it mattered most, I'd chosen the easy path instead of the right one. I couldn't do that, not then and not now. Some violations are too fundamental to overlook, some betrayals too deep to forgive. Eric didn't just steal my equity, he stole my trust, my friendship, my naive belief that people who love you won't hurt you if there's profit in it. That betrayal demanded a response, not revenge but accountability, not punishment but justice. I gave it 2 years of my life to get that justice. In hindsight, it was worth it. Not because winning felt good, it didn't really, but because fighting felt necessary. Because standing up for myself, even at great cost, reinforced something essential about who I am and who I want to be. I'm the kind of person who fights for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it costs everything, even when everyone else says to let it go. Eric Johnson took a lot from me, but he didn't take that. And in the end, that's what matters. The sun is setting as I finish this reflection, sitting on my small balcony overlooking Portland's skyline. Tomorrow I have a meeting with a non-profit that wants to build a community climbing wall for underprivileged kids. It's not a huge project, not life-changing money, but it's meaningful work that helps people. That's what I do now, meaningful work, not empire building or unicorn chasing or any of the startup mythology that nearly destroyed me. Just good work, done well for people who appreciate it. It's enough. More than enough, actually. Eric Johnson is somewhere out there, probably still hustling, still scheming, still convinced the next venture will be his redemption. I genuinely hope he finds whatever he's looking for. Not for his sake, but for mine, because the best revenge is indifference, and I'm almost there. Almost, but not quite. Writing this has dredged up feelings I thought I'd buried. Anger, sadness, that particular grief that comes from losing someone to their own worst impulses. But also gratitude, because Eric Johnson, for all the damage he did, taught me exactly who not to be. He showed me the cost of prioritizing success over integrity, ambition over friendship, winning over doing right. I won't make his mistakes. I won't become what he became. That's my victory. Not the court judgment, not the money, not the vindication. Just this, I'm still me, scarred, yes, wiser, definitely, but fundamentally the same person I was before Eric Johnson tried to steal everything I'd built. He failed. Not in court, he lost there too, but in the bigger sense. He tried to break me, to make me give up, to convince me I was worth less than I knew. And I'm still standing. That's enough. That's everything.